Admiral Sithana stood on the command deck of her flagship and watched the enemy fleet fill every screen. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. 12,000 Kethvari warships surrounded Velfrix Prime, their dark hulls blocking out the stars like a swarm of hungry insects. Below her on the planet's surface, 3 billion people waited to die. The Galactic Concord had ruled this part of space for 10,000 years. 17 species had joined together in peace and trade. They had built great cities on 100 worlds. They had believed themselves safe. They had been wrong. The Kethvari Dominion had come from the deep black between galaxies. They were not one mind, but many minds joined together, a hive that thought as one. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They consumed. Every species they met was absorbed into their collective. Every world they touched was stripped bare. They had swept through the outer systems in 6 months, destroying everything in their path. Now they had come for the heart of the Concord itself. Sithana looked at her own fleet and felt despair settle into her bones. 400 ships. 400 against 12,000. Her people were brave, but bravery would not save them today. She had sent messages to every Concord world begging for help. Some had sent what little they could. Most had stayed silent, too afraid to draw the enemy's attention. She had even sent a message to the humans. The thought made her feel shame. 20 years ago, the humans had appeared through an unknown wormhole at the edge of Concord space. They were a young species, having discovered faster than light travel only 3 centuries before. They had asked to join the Concord. They had asked for friendship and alliance. The council had laughed at them. Primitives, the representatives had called them. Children playing in the dark. Their application was rejected. They were told to return in 1,000 years when they had proven themselves worthy. The humans had said nothing. They had simply turned their ships around and gone home to their single little system on the far side of the galaxy. No one had thought about them since until now. Until Sithana had grown desperate enough to beg primitives for help that she knew would never come. A signal chimed on her console. The Kethvari Overmind was broadcasting. The voice that filled the bridge was not one voice, but thousands speaking together. A horrible chorus that made Sithana's skin crawl. "Your time has ended," the Overmind said. "Your fleet will be destroyed. Your people will be absorbed. Your worlds will feed the Dominion. This is not cruelty. This is nature. The strong consume the weak. You are weak. We are strong. Surrender now, and your absorption will be painless. Resist, and you will suffer." Sithana muted the channel. She had heard enough. "All ships," she said, her voice calm despite the fear in her chest. "Prepare for combat. We will not surrender. We will not run. We will fight until we can fight no more. It has been an honor to serve with you all." Her crew responded with grim determination. They knew they were going to die. They had accepted it. They would make the enemy pay for every meter of space. On the screens, the Kethvari weapons began to glow as they charged for the killing blow. Then something happened that no one expected. Every sensor on every ship in the system screamed at once. Warning lights flashed across 100 bridge consoles. Officers shouted in confusion and fear. Something was appearing between the two fleets, something that had not been there a moment before. Sithana stared at her screens and could not understand what she was seeing. Space itself seemed to tear open like cloth being ripped apart. From that wound came a ship. It was black, so black that it seemed to eat the light around it. It was huge, nearly 3 kilometers long. It had no running lights, no visible weapons, no engine glow. It simply existed where nothing had existed before. "What is that?" her first officer whispered. "Where did it come from?" Before Sithana could answer, a transmission cut through every channel in the system. It broke through the HFY jamming, like the jamming was not even there. The voice that spoke was calm and clear and human. "This is the Terran Union vessel Prometheus Rising. You are targeting protected species. You have 30 seconds to withdraw." For a moment, nothing moved. The HFY fleet hung in space, processing this new information. The Overmind had never encountered anything like this. A single ship appearing from nowhere, making demands of the Dominion. The Overmind's response was swift and brutal. 500 warships broke from the main fleet and turned toward the black vessel. Their weapons charged to full power. Together, they carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. The Prometheus Rising did not move. It did not respond to hails. It simply waited. The HFY fired. 500 ships released their weapons at once. Plasma beams, kinetic rounds, and energy lances all converged on the human vessel. The void lit up with enough destructive power to destroy a dozen battleships. The Barish struck the black ship and did nothing. Sethana watched in disbelief as the attacks hit something invisible surrounding the vessel. Space itself seemed to shimmer like water disturbed by a stone. Every shot, every beam, every projectile simply stopped and faded away. The Prometheus Rising hung untouched in the middle of an apocalyptic firestorm. Then the human ship fired back. Beams of absolute darkness shot out from the vessel. They were not energy weapons. They were not projectiles. They were something else entirely, something that made no sense. Where they touched the HFY ships, matter simply stopped existing. Vessels did not explode. They vanished. Perfect geometric sections of hull and crew and machinery simply ceased to be, leaving nothing behind. A second weapon activated. Streams of brilliant white light passed through HFY shields, as if the shields were not there. They phased through hull plating and detonated power cores from within. Ships exploded in chains, one after another. The third weapon was the most terrible of all. The Prometheus Rising projected a sphere of swirling gray onto the largest enemy dreadnought. The sphere expanded slowly, touching everything in its path. Where it touched, matter changed. Metal flowed like water. Organic material restructured itself. The massive dreadnought collapsed inward, compressed and transformed into a ball of dead matter, no bigger than a small shuttle. 50,000 HFY crew members simply ceased to exist. In 4 minutes and 17 seconds. 500 HFY warships were destroyed. The Prometheus Rising had not moved from its position. It had not taken a single hit. Across the system, silence reigned. The Concorde fleet stared in shock. The HFY Overmind, for the first time in its ancient existence, felt something it had never felt before. Fear.syth single quotes. ENNA found her voice at last. "Get me a channel to that ship," she said. Now, the face that appeared on her screen was human. A woman with dark skin and silver-streaked hair, wearing a simple gray uniform. Her expression was calm, almost bored, as if she had just finished a minor task rather than destroyed 500 warships. "Admiral Sethana," the human said. "I am Captain Amara Okonkwo. Please hold your position. We will handle the rest." "The rest?" Sithana's voice cracked. "There are still 11,000 enemy ships." Captain Okonkwo smiled. It was a small, tired smile. "Yes, this will take about 2 hours. I apologize for the delay." Before Sithana could respond, 53 more signatures appeared across the system. 53 more black ships, decloaking in perfect formation. The humans had arrived. The Battle of Velthrix Prime lasted 1 hour and 47 minutes. Admiral Sithana watched every second of it from her command deck, and she understood almost nothing of what she saw. The human ships moved through the enemy fleet like ghosts through a graveyard. They appeared and disappeared at will, vanishing from one position and appearing in another without crossing the space between. Their weapons fired in patterns that made no tactical sense until she realized that each shot was calculated to cause chain reactions, to turn the enemy's own ships into weapons against each other. The HFY tried everything. They concentrated fire on single human vessels. The shots hit nothing but empty space as the ships phased out of existence moments before impact. They tried to ram the human ships. The black vessels simply were not there when the ramming ships arrived. They tried to retreat, to flee the system and regroup. The human ships appeared in front of them, blocking every escape route, one by one, thousand by thousand. The HFY invasion fleet died. The Overmind screamed commands through the hive link, but its children could not obey commands that asked them to do the impossible. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see until it is already killing you? How do you defend against weapons that ignore your shields? How do you run from ships that are faster than thought? When it was over, not a single HFY vessel remained. 12,000 warships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris and the occasional compressed sphere of transformed matter. The human fleet had not lost a single ship, had not even taken damage. Cethana realized her hands were shaking. She gripped the railing of her command platform and tried to steady herself. Around her, her crew sat in stunned silence. Some wept. Some prayed to gods they had stopped believing in years ago. Some simply stared at their screens, unable to process what they had witnessed. A communication request appeared on her console. Captain Okonkwo again. Cethana accepted the call. The human woman looked the same as before. Calm. Composed. As if she had just finished a morning walk rather than destroyed the most powerful invasion fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral. Captain Okonkwo said, "The immediate threat has been neutralized. My fleet will remain in the system for the next 72 hours to ensure no HFY reinforcements arrive. I suggest you use this time to organize planetary defenses and begin rescue operations for any damaged vessels." Cethana stopped. Started again. "Thank you. I do not know how to thank you. You saved 3 billion lives today." "We did what was necessary," the captain replied. "Nothing more." "How?" The question burst out of Cethana before she could stop it. "How did you do this? Your technology, your weapons, they are beyond anything we have ever seen. 20 years ago, you were dismissed as primitives. What happened?" Captain Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, older. "We learned, Admiral. We learned what happens to primitive species in this galaxy." She paused. "A representative from our government will arrive within 3 days to speak with your council. They will explain everything. For now, please focus on your people. They need you." The channel closed. Over the following days, the Concord tried to learn everything it could about the human fleet. They sent scientists to study the debris fields, hoping to find fragments of human weapons or technology. They found nothing. Whatever the humans used, it left no trace behind. They sent diplomatic vessels to approach the human ships, requesting permission to come aboard and observe. Most requests were politely refused. But on the 3rd day, a delegation of Concord scientists was permitted to tour the Prometheus Rising. They returned in a state of shock. Dr. Cathovolis, the Concord's leading physicist, had to be sedated after the tour. When he finally calmed down enough to speak, his report made no sense to anyone who read it. "The ship exists partially outside of normal space-time," he said, his voice still trembling. "Their cloaking technology does not hide them. It shifts them into a different phase of reality. They can see our universe, but our universe cannot see them. Their weapons..." He stopped, pressing his hands to his face. "Their weapons manipulate fundamental forces. One system tears apart the bonds between atoms. Another creates localized gravity wells that compress matter to impossible densities. A third seems to alter probability itself, making certain outcomes inevitable and others impossible. How is any of this possible? The council demanded. I do not know, Dr. Kethovolis admitted. Our physics says it should not be, but I saw it with my own eyes. They showed me. They were not trying to hide anything. They simply do not care if we understand or not. The most disturbing revelation came from Captain Okonkwo herself. During the tour, one of the scientists had asked about the ship's combat capabilities. The Prometheus Rising is not a warship, the captain had said casually. It is a research vessel. It is designed for long-range scientific expeditions in dangerous space. A research vessel, the scientist had repeated. Not understanding. Yes, the weapon systems are standard defensive equipment. Every ship in the Terran fleet carries similar armaments. She had smiled at his expression. Did you think we sent our warships to save your capital? We sent what was available. The actual military vessels are elsewhere. The scientist had asked no more questions. 3 days after the battle, a human diplomatic vessel arrived. It was smaller than the Prometheus Rising, perhaps 500 meters long, but it moved with the same eerie grace. It carried a single passenger. Director Helena Jang was old by human standards. Her hair was white, her face lined with years of stress and responsibility. She walked with a cane, though she did not seem to need it. When she entered the great council chamber of Valefrix Prime, every representative fell silent. She stood at the speaker's platform for a long moment, studying the assembled aliens with dark, thoughtful eyes. Then she spoke. Honored representatives of the Galactic Concord, she began. My name is Helena Jang. I am the director of the Terran Union's Department of Exodiplomacy. I have come to explain some things that you deserve to know. She activated a holographic display. The image of a blue and green planet appeared, floating in the air before the assembled council. This is Earth, she said. Our homeworld. 312 years ago, we developed faster than light travel. We were excited, hopeful. We believed that the universe would be full of wonders, full of friends. Her expression hardened. We were wrong. The image shifted. A Cathvari hive ship appeared, its twisted biomechanical hull filling the display. Our first contact with alien life was with a Cathvari scouting force. They destroyed our exploration vessel without warning, without communication. They captured the navigation data from its computers. They traced its origin back to Earth, and they sent a consumption fleet. The council stirred uneasily. They all knew what the Cathvari did to worlds they conquered. 107 years ago, 4,000 Cathvari warships entered our solar system. They expected to find primitives. They expected to find easy prey. Director Jang's voice was cold as space itself. They found neither. The display changed again. Earth appeared, but this time it was surrounded by structures. Satellites, stations, weapon platforms, and things that defied easy description. A sphere of technology and power that made the planet look like the heart of a machine god. The Battle of Seoul lasted 19 hours. The Cathvari lost every ship they brought. We lost. She paused. We lost 12 million people. 3 cities. Our innocence. The chamber was utterly silent. But we survived. And we learned. We learned that the galaxy is not kind. We learned that first contact usually means death for the weaker species. We learned that no one was coming to save us. Her eyes swept across the assembled representatives. So we saved ourselves. Director Jang straightened her spine, suddenly looking less like an old woman and more like a force of nature. You called us primitives 20 years ago. You dismissed us as children. You refused our friendship. She smiled, and there was no warmth in it. We do not hold grudges, honored representatives. But neither do we forget. We have spent the last century preparing for a galaxy that showed us only hostility. And now that galaxy needs our help. She let the words hang in the air. We are willing to give it. But first, you need to understand exactly what you are dealing with. The great council chamber erupted into chaos the moment Director Jiang finished speaking. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded explanations. Some demanded apologies. Some demanded that humanity be treated as a threat and destroyed before they could turn their terrible weapons on the Concorde itself. The noise was deafening. Director Jiang stood calmly at the speaker's platform and waited. After several minutes, the Valorian High Chancellor managed to restore order. He was an ancient creature. His scales faded with age, his voice cracked but still commanding. He had led the council for 300 years and had never seen anything like this. Director Jiang, he said slowly, you say you do not hold grudges. Yet you watched us suffer for 20 years. You watched the HFY conquer our outer colonies. You watched millions of our people die. You could have helped us at any time. Why did you wait until now? A fair question, Jiang replied. I will give you a fair answer. We waited because we did not trust you. The chamber stirred angrily, but the Chancellor raised a hand for silence. Explain, he said. When we first encountered the HFY, we learned a terrible lesson. The galaxy is full of species that will destroy you simply because you are different. Simply because you are there. Simply because they can. Jiang's voice was matter-of-fact, without emotion. We had no way of knowing if the Concorde was any different. You rejected our offer of friendship. You called us primitives. You showed us nothing but contempt. She gestured at the assembled representatives. So we watched. We sent observers to your worlds. We studied your histories, your cultures, your governments. We learned your languages and your customs. We needed to know if you were like the HFY, if you would try to destroy us the moment you learned what we had become. And what did you decide? The Chancellor asked. We decided that you were not evil. Arrogant, yes. Dismissive of others, yes. But not evil. You did not consume other species. You did not practice genocide. You were not a threat that needed to be eliminated. Jiang paused. But neither were you friends. So we continued to watch. We continued to wait. We continued to prepare. A Malthari representative stood. The Malthari were known for their scientific brilliance and their blunt honesty. Director Jiang, you speak of preparation. You speak of technology that our best scientists cannot understand. 20 years ago, you had nothing. Now you have weapons that can destroy fleets without effort. How is this possible? Jiang smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of someone who had carried a heavy weight for a very long time. You misunderstand, Representative. 20 years ago, we did not have nothing. We simply chose to hide what we had. She activated her holographic display again. When we asked to join your Concorde, we sent our oldest ships. We sent crews who were instructed to appear harmless. We wanted to see how you would treat a species that seemed weak. The display showed a human vessel. Small, primitive-looking, with visible engine ports and clumsy weapon mounts. Exactly the kind of ship the Concorde had dismissed 2 decades ago. This is what we showed you. The image shifted. The same ship design, but now surrounded by a field of shimmering energy. The hull seemed to fold into itself, becoming something sleeker, more advanced. Weapons that had been hidden emerged from compartments that should not have existed. The ship transformed before their eyes into something utterly different. This is what we actually had. Even then, the chamber fell silent. We have been advancing our technology at an accelerated rate since the Battle of Seoul, Jiang continued. We had to. We knew that the HFY would eventually find us again. We knew that other threats might emerge. We could not afford to be weak. We could not afford to be primitive. So we became strong. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representative after representative. Strong enough to destroy your entire Concord if we chose. Strong enough to take every world you have ever colonized. Strong enough to make ourselves rulers of this galaxy. Fear rippled through the assembled aliens. Here it was, the threat they had been dreading. But we do not want that, Jiang said softly. We have never wanted that. We want only two things, security for our people and peace with our neighbors. We revealed ourselves now because the HFY were about to commit genocide. 3 billion lives were about to be snuffed out. That we could not allow. Even if you had treated us better, we would have acted. Even if you had welcomed us as friends, we would have hidden our true strength until we were certain we could trust you. How can you speak of trust when you have deceived us for 20 years? The Chancellor demanded. How can you speak of trust when you dismissed us as worthless the moment we asked for friendship? Jiang replied. We did what we had to do to survive, just as you have done what you had to do to build your Concord. Neither of us is innocent. Neither of us is entirely guilty. We are simply species trying to survive in a universe that does not care if we live or die. She turned off the holographic display and leaned on her cane. I am not here to argue about the past. The past cannot be changed. I am here to discuss the future. The HFY Dominion has suffered a devastating defeat, but they are not destroyed. They will rebuild. They will return. And when they do, they will be more cautious, more cunning, more dangerous. What do you propose? The Chancellor asked. An alliance. A true alliance, not the mockery of one that you offered us before. Humanity will share some of our technology with you. Not all of it, not yet, but enough to help you defend yourselves. In exchange, you will agree to certain principles. No genocide. No slavery. No conquest of species that have not yet achieved spaceflight. You want us to change your laws based on your demands. A Khazari representative stood, his crystalline body flickering with anger. You come here with weapons of unimaginable power and tell us how to govern ourselves? Yes, Jiang said simply. That is exactly what I am doing. Because if you are not willing to meet those basic standards of civilization, then we have no interest in protecting you. We will take our ships and go home and let you face the HFY alone. The threat hung in the air like a blade. You would let billions die over principles. The Khazari demanded. We would let billions die to prevent the deaths of trillions, Jiang replied. The HFY consume everything they touch. If we protect species that do the same, we become part of the problem. We become enablers of the very evil we fought against. She shook her head. That is not who we are. That is not who we will ever be. The chamber descended into heated debate. Representatives argued with each other and with Jiang. They demanded more information, more guarantees, more concessions. They accused humanity of arrogance, of manipulation, of playing God with the galaxy's fate. Through it all, Jiang stood firm. She answered questions patiently. She explained humanity's position clearly. She did not apologize for what her people had done, and she did not threaten what they might do. She simply laid out the choice before the council and waited for them to decide. Finally, after 6 hours of debate, the Chancellor called for a vote. The motion to reject humanity's offer failed by a margin of 3 votes. The motion to accept passed with conditions that both sides would need to negotiate. As the council session ended, Admiral Sithana approached Director Jiang. The Admiral looked exhausted. The last few days had aged her visibly. Director, she said quietly, may I ask you a personal question? Of course. When your ship appeared between our fleets, when Captain Okonkwo made her demand. Were you afraid? Were you afraid that we would attack you? That we would side with the Kethvari against you? Jan was silent for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was barely above a whisper. We are always afraid, Admiral. Every moment of every day. We learned fear 100 years ago, and we have never forgotten it. She looked up at the stars, visible through the chamber's great windows. But fear does not control us. Fear reminds us why we must be strong, why we must be ready, why we can never let what happened to us happen to anyone else. She turned and walked toward the chamber's exit, her cane tapping softly against the floor. We are not heroes, Admiral. We are not gods. We are just people who were hurt very badly and decided that no one should have to feel that pain again. That is all. That is all. She left Sithana standing alone in the empty chamber, staring at the stars and wondering what kind of species could turn their trauma into such terrible, beautiful strength. In the months that followed the Battle of Veilthrix Prime, the galaxy learned just how wrong it had been about humanity. The first revelation came from the population reports. The Concord had always believed that humans numbered perhaps 2 billion, all of them crowded onto their single homeworld and a handful of space stations. The true number, when humanity finally shared it, caused several representatives to require medical attention. 473 billion humans existed across the galaxy. They had not been hiding in one system. They had been everywhere. 47 star systems spread across an enormous region of space, each one hidden behind cloaking fields that made entire planets invisible to sensors. While the Concord had been dismissing them as primitives, humanity had been building an empire in the shadows. How is this possible? The Council demanded. How could you hide so many people from us for so long? The human ambassador assigned to explain these matters, a young man named James Chun, seemed almost embarrassed by the question. We were very careful, he said simply. We knew that if we revealed ourselves too soon, we would become a target. So we developed technologies to hide our expansion. Every colony world has a cloaking field that makes it invisible to outside sensors. Every ship that leaves human space carries devices that mask its true capabilities. We have been among you for decades, observing and learning, and you never knew. Among us? The Melthery representative leaned forward. What do you mean, among us? Chun hesitated. Perhaps that information should wait for another time. Tell us now, the Valorian Chancellor commanded. Chun sighed. Very well. Humanity has developed genetic modification techniques that allow our agents to pass as members of other species. We have also developed holographic technology that is undetectable by your scanners. For the past 20 years, human observers have been living on your worlds, working in your governments, serving on your ships. We needed to understand you. We needed to know if you could be trusted. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted about violations of sovereignty, about infiltration, about acts of war. Chun waited patiently for the noise to die down. I understand your anger, he said, but consider our position. We were a young species that had been attacked without warning by an enemy that wanted to consume us. We had no way of knowing which species were friendly and which were threats. We could not simply reveal ourselves and hope for the best. The stakes were too high. So we watched. We learned. We prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. And now, the Chancellor asked, now that you have revealed yourselves, will your agents leave our worlds? They already have. The moment our fleet decloaked at Veilthrix Prime, every human agent received orders to withdraw. By now, most of them have returned to human space. We no longer need to hide among you. We no longer need to watch from the shadows. Chun smiled slightly. We are hoping that we can simply talk to you instead. The next revelation came from the Concord's military analysts. They had been running simulations based on the human fleet capabilities observed at Valthrix Prime. The results were classified immediately, but the conclusions leaked within hours. If the Terran Union chose to conquer the galaxy, no force could stop them. The war would last approximately 3 years. Human casualties would be minimal. Concord casualties would be total. The simulations assumed that humanity had shown their full strength at Valthrix Prime. The analysts later learned that they had shown perhaps 10% of their actual military capability. Admiral Sethana was invited to tour a human military installation. She traveled through a wormhole that the humans had created, a stable tunnel through space that connected Valthrix Prime to a system deep in human territory. The journey took seconds instead of months. The installation she visited was called Forge 7. It was a shipyard, one of dozens scattered throughout human space. Massive structures orbited a lifeless moon, their construction bays filled with vessels in various stages of completion. Savannah counted over 300 ships being built simultaneously, each one larger and more powerful than the Prometheus Rising. "These are our peacekeeping vessels," her guide explained. "They are designed for rapid response to threats throughout the galaxy. Once your council agrees to the alliance terms, we will station several squadrons in Concord space." "Peacekeeping vessels," Sithana repeated. "You call them peacekeeping vessels. What else would we call them?" "Warships, battle cruisers, destroyers of worlds." The guide, a young human woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, shook her head. "We do not think of them that way, Admiral. A weapon is only as evil as the hand that wields it. These ships exist to protect, not to conquer. They will never fire on a species that has not attacked us first. They will never be used to subjugate or enslave. They are shields, not swords. You have the power to rule the galaxy," Sithana said. "Why do you not use it?" The guide was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Because we remember what it feels like to be powerless. We remember watching our cities burn. We remember the screams of 12 million people dying in a single day. We remember the terror of facing an enemy that wanted nothing but our destruction." She looked at Sithana with eyes that had seen too much. "Power is not the problem, Admiral. The desire to use power to hurt others is the problem. We have the first. We have worked very hard to make sure we never developed a second." Savannah thought about this for a long time. The third revelation came from the Cathvari themselves. Without their invasion fleet, the Dominion began to fracture. The Overmind had held the Hive together through force of will and force of arms. With both greatly weakened, the subordinate minds began to fight among themselves. Civil war erupted across Cathvari space. Human observers watched the conflict with careful attention. They did not intervene directly. Instead, they waited 6 months after the Battle of Valthrix Prime. A message arrived at the Concord Council from an unexpected source. A faction of Cathvari, calling themselves the Free Minds, had broken away from the Dominion. They had rejected the Hive's philosophy of consumption and conquest. They wanted to negotiate. The council was divided. Many wanted nothing to do with the species that had nearly destroyed them. Others argued that peace was always worth pursuing. It was humanity that provided the deciding voice. "Meet with them," Director Jiang advised. "Listen to what they have to say. If they are sincere, help them. If they are not, you will have lost nothing but time." "And if they betray us?" the Chancellor asked. "Then we will handle them," Jiang replied, "just as we handled their invasion fleet." The negotiations lasted 3 months. The Free Minds were genuine. They were a new generation of Cathvari, born after the Overmind's power began to weaken. They had grown up questioning the Hive's endless hunger, wondering if there might be another way to exist. When the treaty was finally signed, It marked the first time in recorded history that Kethvari had made peace with another species. Admiral Sithana attended the signing ceremony. She watched as a Kethvari representative, still strange and alien but no longer terrifying, pressed its appendage against the document alongside representatives from 12 Concord species. Director Jiang stood beside her, watching with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "You did this," Sithana said. "Without your intervention, this would never have happened." "We created the opportunity," Jiang replied. "They chose to take it. The Kethvari who signed that treaty made their own decision. They deserve the credit for their own courage. Why do you always deflect praise?" Jiang smiled. "Because praise is dangerous, Admiral. It makes you think you are special. It makes you think you are better than others. And when you start thinking that way, you start making decisions that treat others as less important than yourself." She shook her head. "We have too much power to allow ourselves that luxury. We must always remember that we are just people, flawed, frightened, trying our best to do the right thing in a universe that makes doing the right thing very, very hard." The ceremony ended. The representatives dispersed. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but hopeful. And across the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity as primitives began to look at them with new eyes, with respect, with fear, and slowly with something that might one day grow into friendship. 10 years passed. The galaxy changed in ways that no one had predicted. The Treaty of Valthrix, as it came to be known, brought not just peace, but transformation. Human technology, shared carefully and gradually, revolutionized medicine, transportation, and energy production across Concord space. Diseases that had plagued species for millennia were cured in months. Travel times between stars dropped from weeks to hours. Worlds that had struggled with poverty suddenly had access to clean power and abundant resources. The humans asked for nothing in return except adherence to their principles. No genocide, no slavery, no conquest of primitive species. These rules were not always easy to follow. Some Concord members had built their economies on practices that humanity found unacceptable. But faced with the choice between changing their ways and losing human protection, most chose to change. Those few who refused found themselves alone in a suddenly dangerous galaxy. The Kethvari Dominion collapsed completely within 5 years of the battle. The free minds grew stronger, absorbing more and more of the fractured hive. They were still strange, still alien, still difficult to understand. But they were no longer enemies. They sent ambassadors to Concord worlds. They opened trade routes. They began to build something new, something that was neither the old hive nor a copy of Concord civilization, but something entirely their own. Admiral Sithana retired from military service 3 years after the battle. She had become a symbol of the old Concord, the one that had stood alone against the darkness. She did not want to be a symbol. She wanted to understand. She requested permission to visit Earth. The humans agreed immediately. They seemed pleased that she had asked. The journey took her through one of the stable wormholes that now connected human space to the wider galaxy. She emerged in a system that took her breath away. Earth floated before her, blue and green and white, more beautiful than any world she had ever seen. Around it spun thousands of structures, everything from tiny satellites to massive stations that dwarfed her flagship. The space around the planet hummed with activity. Ships coming and going in endless streams. Her guide was a young human man named Thomas, who had been assigned to show her the homeworld that had produced such remarkable people. They descended to the surface in a small shuttle, landing in a city called New Geneva. Sithana had expected something harsh and military, a fortress world that produced nothing but weapons and warriors. Instead, she found parks and gardens, children playing in open spaces, people of every shape and color going about their daily lives with easy smiles and friendly words. "This is not what I expected," she admitted to Thomas, as they walked through a crowded marketplace. "What did you expect?" "I am not sure. Something darker. Something harder. Your people have been through such terrible things. I thought the scars would be visible." Thomas nodded. "The scars are there, Admiral. They are just hidden beneath the surface. We learned long ago that letting trauma define us would only create more trauma. So we built a society that looks forward instead of backward. We remember the past, but we do not let it control us." He led her to a memorial on the outskirts of the city. It was a simple thing, a wall of black stone stretching for nearly a kilometer, covered with names. Millions of names. The 12 million who had died when the Kethvari first attacked Earth. Sithana stood before the wall and felt the weight of it press against her chest. "We built this so we would remember," Thomas said softly. "Not to remember hate, not to remember anger. To remember why we must be strong, why we must be ready, why we can never let it happen again, to us or to anyone else." "Your people are terrifying," Sithana said quietly. "I do not mean that as an insult. I mean it as a fact. You have more power than any species in the galaxy, and you use it to protect others instead of conquering them. You have every reason to hate the universe, and instead you reach out with open hands. That is terrifying because it is so far beyond what I thought any species capable of." Thomas smiled. It was a sad smile, but a genuine one. "We are not saints, Admiral. We are not gods. We are just people who made a choice. When the universe showed us cruelty, we could have responded with cruelty. We could have become exactly what we feared. Instead, we chose to become something different. Something better." He looked at the wall of names. "We made that choice for them. For the 12 million who died so that we could live. We decided that their deaths would mean something, that we would build a future worthy of their sacrifice." Sithana stayed on Earth for a month. She walked through cities that stretched toward the sky. She spoke with scientists who were unraveling the secrets of the universe. She met soldiers who were gentle with children and philosophers who could quote poetry in a dozen languages. She saw a species that had turned their pain into purpose, their fear into strength, their isolation into a determination to never let others feel alone. On her last day, she visited the University of Terra, the greatest institution of learning in human space. There she met someone she had not expected. The young Kethvari was small by her species standards, her chitinous body still gleaming with youth. She was a student, one of the first of her kind to study among humans. Her name was Veltherin, and she was studying human history. "Why?" Sithana asked her. "Why would you come here? Your people and these people were mortal enemies. They destroyed your empire." Veltherin's compound eyes regarded her calmly. "They could have destroyed us entirely, and they did not. They could have enslaved us, and they did not. They could have wiped our species from existence, and no one would have blamed them. Instead, they gave us something the Overmind never did." "What?" "A choice." Veltherin clicked her mandibles in what Sithana had learned was a Kethvari expression of deep emotion. "I am here because I want to understand a species capable of that kind of strength. I want to understand how to be that kind of strong. Not strong enough to destroy your enemies, but strong enough to forgive them." Sithana left Earth the next day. As her ship climbed away from the blue and green world, she looked back at it through her viewport and felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. The universe was vast and dark and full of dangers. There were threats beyond the Kethvari, challenges that no one had yet imagined. The future was uncertain, as it always was. But humanity had taught the galaxy something important. They had shown that power did not have to corrupt, that strength did not have to be cruel, that a species could suffer the worst the universe had to offer and still choose to be kind. Across the cosmos, other species began to understand. They began to change. They began to wonder if perhaps they had been wrong about what it meant to be civilized, what it meant to be strong, what it meant to be worthy of the stars. And in the shadows between galaxies, in the places where light never reached, other things were watching. Ancient things, powerful things, things that had destroyed civilizations before humanity had learned to walk upright. They had noticed a strange new species that had emerged from an unremarkable yellow star. They had seen what humanity could do. They had observed their terrible power and their strange mercy. And for the first time in eons, they felt something they had almost forgotten how to feel. Uncertainty. Perhaps. They thought these humans were worth watching. Perhaps they were worth approaching. Perhaps, after billions of years of isolation, it was time to see what this young species truly was. Perhaps it was time for a new first contact, but that was a story for another day. For now, the cosmos had been stunned. A mysterious human vessel had decloaked in battle, and nothing would ever be the same again. In her cabin aboard her ship, Admiral Sithana wrote the final lines of her report to the Concord Council. The humans are not what we thought they were. They are something far greater and far more frightening. They are a species that has looked into the darkness of the universe and chosen to become a light. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if we are worthy of the friendship they have offered. But I know this: if we fail to learn from them, if we fail to become better than we have been, we will have wasted the greatest opportunity the galaxy has ever received. She sealed the report and sent it. Then she leaned back in her chair, looked out at the stars streaming past her window, and smiled. The future was uncertain. The future was frightening. The future was full of challenges that no one could predict. But for the first time in her long life, Admiral Sithana believed that the future might also be wonderful. And that belief, she realized, was humanity's greatest gift of all. Not their weapons, not their technology, not their power. Hope. They had given the galaxy hope. And hope, in the end, was stronger than fear.